Okay, we're live now, Chairman.
Thank you, Jane. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this month's Policy and Resources Committee meeting. My name's Councillor Mohammed Iqbal. I'm leader of Pendleborough Council and I'm chairman of this particular committee. Before I go through some housekeeping rules, I just want to do a roll check of councillors that should be here this evening. And then likewise, I have some people from members of the public who've indicated to speak, who I just want to double check are here as well. Well, before I do, if you could all please mute yourselves, and then when I ask you to confirm your attendance, if you can just unmute yourself, confirm that you're here, and then just put yourself back on mute. Thank you. So, in terms of the councillors, I've got Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor David Clegg.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah Corbin Price.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Tommy Cooney.
Here.
Thank you. I'm obviously here. Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Ashad Mahmood.
Yeah, present.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Newman.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jonathan Nixon.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor David Whip.
Here.
And then we have 3 substitutes for colleagues who are not attending this committee. And the substitutes are Councillor Mohammed Aslam. You're on mute, Councillor Aslam. Do you want to unmute?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Foxley.
Paul Foxley's trying to join us. We're just sending him another link.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Mohammed Saqib.
Present. I'm here.
And then, in terms of members of the public, I've got speakers. If I just read your name out, and if you can just unmute yourself to confirm that you're here, please. Lindsay Bowker.
Present.
Thank you. Sarah Wattmore. Sarah Wattmore. No, not with us at the moment. Amelia Bowker.
Present.
Thank you. And I've got somebody called Pete.
Yes, I'm present.
Your surname, Pete, please.
Oh, sorry, Warden.
Warden, that's fine. Thank you. Then I've got Kirsty Pugh.
Yep, here.
Thank you. Gillian Taylor.
I'm here.
Thank you. And then I have another member of the public to speak on another application, Mohammed Asham.
Here.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So in terms of the agenda, I'll go through that. Item 1 is declarations of interest. Do any of the councillors present have any declarations of interest to declare? No, silence means nothing. Item 2 is public question time, and that's to receive for a maximum of 15 minutes any questions from members of the public on any items which don't appear on the agenda. Jane, do we have any members of the public on?
No, Chairman, we've not had any requests.
Okay, that's fine. And then item 3 is the minutes of the last meeting. Everybody happy that they're a correct record?
Move those.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. That's fine. Move swiftly on then to deal with the first planning application. Somebody's muted, that's why I'm echoing. I think it's Councillor Greaves, that's it. Thank you. So we have a planning application, and my intention is to try and deal with these applications in terms of the speakers together. So the first one is for the change of use of land, and then the second one is the formation of an access track. So in terms of those people that have indicated to speak, if you want to speak on both, I'd ask you to both please exercise your right that I'll give you to speak at the same time. And then in terms of councillors, when we come to the debate, because of the process, we need to deal with each application in turn, but you can take into account what each speaker has said in association with both applications. So the first speaker that I've got, and sorry, in terms of the speakers, normally the council's rules say that you're only allowed up to 5 minutes for each side of the debate. So 5 minutes for those speaking in for and 5 for those that are against. At the moment, I have 3 people speaking in favour and 3 all speaking against. All I'd ask is that I'll try and be quite liberal in terms of the time, but if I think that you're repeating the same points or you're going on too long, then I may have to ask you to wrap up, or Jane, who's our committee clerk, may just have to put you on mute if you're going on far too long, but hopefully it won't.
Sarah Wattmore.
is now joining.
All right. Sarah, is that Sarah Wattmore? Is that you that's joined us?
It is, yes. Good evening. I'm sorry I'm late to the meeting.
It's okay, not to worry. That's fine. So I'll go in the order that I've got the speakers, and the first speaker that I've got is Lindsay Bowker. Lindsay, you've got, normally I'd say up to 5 minutes, but if you can try and be concise, please, in terms of your point, dealing with both applications, if that's in your intention. So if you want to unmute yourself, please, Lindsay, the floor's yours.
Good evening, Chairman, and good evening, Councillors. Thank you for the opportunity this evening for me to address my concerns and share my objections to both the change of use of land at Harweys Farm and the retrospective woodland track application. Firstly, if I may address the change of use of land to educational and camping. My objection is based on highway safety, primarily in relation to the access track running from Skipton Old Road, but being mindful of similarities to that of Cobb Lane. My concerns relating to highway safety issues arise from the following. Number one, the applicant is unable to mitigate the need for vehicles reversing over long distances. Number two, the track behind Jerusalem Farmhouse is steep in places. It includes a 90-degree bend and has limited intervisibility. There is a steep verge to the left of the track leading up to the bend, which is, at best, dangerous and with inclement icy weather, perilous. If a minibus was to hit an icy patch on this section and the driver applied the brakes, the impact doesn't bear thinking about. It's not safe and it's totally irresponsible putting vulnerable children at such risk. Number three, there are public rights of way over the entire length of the track. There is also interference with adjoining footpaths. Further intensification of use would exaggerate highway safety issues for pedestrians and other users. It is for these reasons that I implore the committee to reject the application on the grounds of highway safety. The application is contrary to policy ENV4 of the Pendle Local Plan Part 1 Core Strategy and paragraphs 108 to 110 of the NPPF. As regards the woodland track, policy ENV1, protecting and enhancing our natural and historic environments from the Pendle Local Plan Part 1, states that development which would adversely affect the established interest of a local nature reserve or other local site, for example a BHS such as Kelbrook Wood, either directly or indirectly, will only be permitted where the benefits of the proposal outweigh the need to safeguard the nature conservation value of the site. The construction of the new track within this designated area is damaging to the biodiversity value of this land. Given the fact that Kelbrook Wood has survived for hundreds of years without an access track for woodland management, the proposed track is not reasonably necessary for other purposes other than to serve the proposed education and camping use. If that proposed education and camping use is clearly not acceptable for highway safety reasons, then there is no reasonable requirement for the new track. Therefore, there are no benefits of substance for providing the track, and policy ENV1 cannot be met. It is therefore requested that the application for the track is refused by the council and the land reinstated for the following reason. The harm caused to this locally designated BHS is not outweighed by any benefits associated with the proposed and partly constructed new access track. The development is therefore contrary to policy ENV1 from the Pendle Local Plan, Part 1. However, if the committee is mindful to approve this application, taking into consideration the highway safety issues on the access routes from both Skipton Old Road and Cobb Lane, which invalidates the need for an access track into the woodland for Harweys kit customers, may we request the access track into the woodland is conditioned for use for woodland management only. Thank you, committee.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. The next speaker that I have is Sarah Wattmore. Sarah, if you want to unmute yourself, and the floor's yours.
Okay, thank you. So good evening all. I live at Low Lace Barn, adjacent the wood. Approval of this application would set a precedent and undermine both national and local planning guidance designed to protect the rural landscape in accordance with policy ENV1. Allowing any exception for non-agricultural interests opens the door to all sorts of future applications by people seeking reasons to circumvent existing guidance and justify new development on agricultural land. Our ancient woodland has been growing and undisturbed for hundreds of years and cannot be replaced. If the site is to be granted for non-agricultural development, there is less chance of protection of the land from any further change of use in the longer term, particularly if Harwees was to be sold in the future. The Pendleborough Council Environmental Officer has implied that whilst the track itself may not damage the biodiversity of the woodland to any great extent, its intended use for educational and camping groups would do so through disturbance. Essentially, it will encourage people to enter a habitat that has had very little disturbance in the past. On days when Harwees Kick is operational, we often see deer running around the perimeter of the woodland, having been scared off from their habitat in the wood. We've lived here for 15 years and have never seen deer activity to this extent. I would question the integrity of the proposal, and I'm conscious of the applicant's misleading application submitted to the council as a means of obtaining planning consent. My suspicions arise from A, a total disregard for planning law, given the woodland track is a retrospective application, B, violation of the 28-day rule the applicants have relied upon over the last couple of years, C, the suggested small-scale development for the purpose of planning contradicts this statement from Companies House, which suggests otherwise. D, given this is a kit company, the lack of communication with neighbours. E, the size of the timber cabin and the acreage for change of use is not akin to small-scale. I would ask the committee to consider the longer-term consequence of approving this application and refuse both applications put forwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Next speaker I have is Amelia Bowker. Amelia, if you want to unmute yourself.
Good evening, committee, and thank you for this opportunity. A few weeks ago at the Colne committee meeting, Councillor Coburn Price highlighted a concern that the Harwees Farm application had the potential to substantially grow beyond what is set out within this current application. She identified the case of Guy's Plant Hire as an example of a business which, in the form it has grown to, would never be approved for planning now. Indeed, this is a similar concern of my own. The business expansion at Harwees is already apparent and must be stopped forthwith. Testimony of the Harwees potential for expansion is a previous concept at Harwees called Gig in a Barn, which is a ticketed music festival which has its own website. There are currently teepees and log burners fixed in the wood, and if you review their Facebook page, Harwees Kick appear to be advertising a commercial campsite with specialist signage identifying toilets, hand washing areas, camping area, bins, etc. It's like something I've seen at a music festival. In addition, the applicant mentioned at the West Craven meeting about their relationship and plans with the business High Adventure. For those who are not aware, High Adventure are a large commercial enterprise who offer, and I quote, holiday camps for adventurous kids, coincided with orienteering style activities. Clearly, Harwees are aiming for a similar concept, hence their retrospective application for educational and camping use across 22 hectares. The fundamental difference is that Harwees is landlocked and is based 950 metres from the main highway. These are just a few examples which demonstrate the applicant's interest and intention for business growth. A high adventure type of business would easily be attainable should planning be granted across 22 hectares, which is a vast area of land to be changed from agriculture to camping and educational use. The space would become akin to an urban school playground and a commercial campsite. Clearly, if this application was to be accepted, the floodgates would be open for business expansion. This would result in an intensified use of the track and added highway risk for the children attending the riding school and users of the public right-of-way. In addition, the application is misleading. It suggests that 2 groups will constitute 2 minibuses per day, creating vehicular movement on the track. This doesn't sound significant in the grand scheme of things. However, it is evident from the business's confirmation statement on Companies House that Harweys Kick employ 2 staff and have 4 volunteers. In addition, the speaker from the alternative school confirmed at the West Craven meeting that parents and teachers also visit the farm. Undoubtedly, using their own transport, it begs the question as to why these important details have been omitted from the planning application. It is also of note that there are 2 other businesses which operate from Harweys Farm, in addition to a holiday cottage. Where will these extra vehicles park? In my opinion, it is likely these vehicles will create an obstruction on the public right-of-way. Secondly, Harweys Farm is based in a rural area where walking, cycling and using public transport are not feasible options from the main highway. Therefore, the customers, staff, volunteers, teachers, parents, holidaymakers and the residents attending the farm will also need to utilise vehicular transport. As a result, the proposal is not sustainable. I am aware of 4 additional businesses within a 6-mile radius which are suitable for Harweys Kick customers. These businesses are already operating sustainably and offering the same service proposed by Harweys Kick. Considering the locality of these businesses to Harweys Farm serving the same purpose, I do not believe there is a requirement for this additional business in a location has been described by the planning officer as not a sustainable location for education and tourism uses. This evening, I would ask the Policy and Resources Committee members to uphold the view of the LCC Highways officer who visited the site and deemed the highways unsuitable, the Con Committee who also stated that serious weight and consideration should be given to highways and the application be refused, and finally, the planning officer who is also recommending refusal on the ground of highways, safety and sustainability. The evidence is damning, and I request that councillors uphold this same view and refuse the application for any change of use at Harweys Farm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amelia. I appreciate that. Okay, the next speaker I have there is Mr. Peter Warden. Peter, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to thank you today for taking the time out to listen to me. I'm a director at Harweys Farm, CRC, and my previous background has been supporting disadvantaged young people in Pendle for 8 years of local youth work from 2008 to 2016. So why am I asking to speak to you today? Throughout my years in the profession and working within the Pendle community, I've realised that there are several young people and families in Pendle that are disadvantaged and require extra support to help them achieve their life goals. It is my absolute belief and my duty as a director of the CRC to support these young people and their families by providing alternative support to help them become a positive citizen in the Pendle community. Harweys Farm has potential to provide educational support to young people that have disengaged from education. Research shows that people benefit from outdoor learning in all areas of life. Outdoor learning provides a highly effective way of addressing some of society's key challenges. At a global level, fostering a connection that leads to respect and care for the natural world, and appreciation of biodiversity and sustainability and pro-environmental behaviours. At a societal level, developing a sense of place leading to a greater engagement within the community and appreciation of the opportunities available to live, learn and work in the local area. At an interpersonal level, providing a safe and supportive setting to enhance social skills, appreciate and value difference, encouraging loving and meaningful relationships across generations that foster tolerance, respect and kindness. And at an intrapersonal level, engagement with nature and the environment for health, well-being, nature connection leading to lifelong participation and outdoor competence, developing character, resilience, positive risk-taking. In my experience, there's children and young people that are not always academic and often opt out of learning in the classroom in its traditional form are more vocational, and the Harweys Farm outdoor learning services to support Pendle educational providers provides vocational learning to children and young people to ensure that they're positively engaged in education and give them a chance in the longer term to become economically active within Pendle and positively contribute to the community. I plead with you to consider the true value of this awe-inspiring impact that this work could have. Please work with the applicant to overcome any barriers, and please make this happen, for this is a uniquely exciting opportunity for those in your area who you seek to serve. I'm sure that you'll have many opportunities too in your roles as officers and councillors to transform the life chances of young people, not just now, but for the future. Well, this is what you have today. This planning application has the power to affect change on the now, but also the future. What a heavy responsibility, but truly vital role you have tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pete. Next speaker that I have is Kirsty Pugh. Kirsty, if you want to unmute yourself, the floor's yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm here this evening to tell you all about how the Alternative School has worked with Jill and her team at Harwys Farm over the last few years. We're a school that works with children who have been excluded from one or more educational settings or are at high risk of being excluded. Often the children we work with have been passed from pillar to post, and we are the last chance for them. All of the children we work with have social, emotional and behavioural challenges and areas of extra need. Many are from low-income local families with extreme trauma in their background, and almost all of them have never had the opportunity to visit a farm, learn how to play in the woods, or know how to make positive friendships. The farm plays a pivotal role in helping us to plan for and educate these children in areas of personal, social and emotional development and growth, all key areas that will ensure the children can progress on and be successful in their future lives. It is these key areas that are much harder to teach in a classroom, and we are very thankful for the opportunity to work with the farm to ensure success for these children. The work that we do is all about getting children back on track. We teach them that anyone can succeed in life if given the right environment and given the right support. We and Jill believe that all children have their own strengths, and this is taught and encouraged through the work that Jill does with her forest school. Yes, there are other providers out there that do similar to what Jill does. However, we have tried working with lots and lots of other providers, all local and all far away as well. And there is not one other provider that is willing to work with the difficult children that we work with. Not only do our children progress in areas that are more challenging to plan for in the classroom, but 80% of them have stated that it is the highlight of their learning week. This helps us to keep the children motivated, engaged, and provides them with something to work towards and look forward to. Our pupils know that when they visit Jill and her team, it will always be fun, whatever the weather, and even on the coldest of days, people are looking forward to going out and hanging out with the sheep, the chickens, and Jill's hot drinks in her kitchen. All of our children have achieved multiple national recognised qualifications on the farm, which is an amazing achievement. As an independent school, we must still be working towards these nationally recognised qualifications and curriculum. And Jill supports us with not only the science, but the maths, the English, and that's all taught at the farm. Purposeful enjoyment is absolutely our mantra at TAS, and to see exactly what goes on and what can be achieved, I would invite anyone to participate in a session that Jill runs. Harwys Farm and Forest School plays such an important role for us, working with children from 5 to 16 years up. We travel up to the farm in small classes. We have a maximum class size of 6, and we travel up in just a 9-seater minibus. That minibus contains 6 children and 2 teachers. We never have teachers travelling up separate in vehicles, nor do we have parents travelling up in vehicles either. In addition to having a beautiful and calming learning environment where children can explore nature, learn new skills, manage risks and investigate, there's other countless opportunities to work on development. Some of the things that Jill provides for us are forest school activities such as whittling, building dens, collecting and learning about nature, campfire cooking, safety around the stream and water. Conservation and planting trees is a huge part of what we do, supporting Jill on the Heritage Fund and learning all about how to protect the environment. Recycling projects and upcycling, animal care, that's always a favourite of our students, learning how to feed the sheep, wean the sheep, learning about the local animals, science lessons around the wind turbine and the biomass boiler, making handmade instruments and photography projects, and the list goes on. Over time,
Kirsty, you've got about a minute left before I'll have to cut you off.
Before you chop me off, that's fine. I'll just add a couple of extra things in. We also have a very strict school policy. We're not allowed to take children out in weathers under 1 degree or less. So there's never a time when we would travel in icy conditions. Our pupils are happy to walk up if that is what is needed. And I just want to add that I've known Jill for a long time, and I absolutely trust Jill's intentions regarding the woodland, and know that Jill is passionate about supporting the environment and supporting young people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. And then finally, in terms of the speakers, I've got Jill Taylor. Jill, do you want to unmute yourself?
I'm unmuted, thank you. Would you like me to make a start? Can you hear me okay? Hello?
Jill, if you can hear me, yes, if you want to make a start.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't think you could hear me. Right, okay, so I'm going to refer to the recent planning officer's report because I need to be concise. Right, so planning application for the Light Forest track, the recommendation came to approve, so I don't really want to go into that. The other planning application, which is change of use to education, is the one I want to talk about tonight. NB, it's education, not tourism. There seems to be some confusion that we want a campsite. We don't want a campsite at all. What we want is to be able to do residential activities with the groups, which would come under the educational conditions. So, the application site is in a location with low accessibility that would not be readily accessible by public transport and sustainable modes of transport. It would not be conveniently accessible to users and would result in a significant increase in car usage. Right, in response to that, could I say our visitors don't need to use public transport to access the activity. They're happy to attend and they're not put off at all by the low accessibility. We are working to remove and have worked to remove barriers to access. So, for example, the visitors arrive together as a school or a community group, in the main by minibus. Transport to their pre-booked activities arranged for them. They arrive as a group and at a set time for their session. We're launching sustainable transport projects at the moment, accessing the farm by bike. Yes, you can do it. We'll be working with Pendle Youth Forum around the antisocial behaviour issues in Colne. That's our new project. And we're working on another project linking in with Elisha House. So they're going to be coming up and using bikes as well. Visitors have always accessed on foot via the various public footpaths. So those two sustainable ways. Significant increase in traffic. Firstly, traffic here is really, really light. I can't remember the last time I met a vehicle going down that drive. Neither can the post lady, because I asked her this morning. And our lodger, who's been with us for 17 months, has only ever met 3 vehicles. So it's light traffic. It isn't heavy traffic at all. With regard to the increase in that traffic from this project, we submit the following conditions to our activity. Maximum group size 12, no more than 2 groups on site per day. This applies midweek and the weekend. No more than 1 event over a weekend, so either a Saturday or a Sunday, and no more than 2 weekends per month. So that's only 28 times per year that the weekend would be impacted. Weekend access may be by minibus and private car, and we encourage car sharing. We're ultimately looking to buy our own electric minibus for use because many of our groups still can't afford to hire a minibus. Not forgetting that we've got 2 access roads and our regular groups actually all use Great Edge access. Our application asks for only a modest increase in traffic and that's it. The proposed vehicle access to the site does not provide sufficient opportunities to safely pass and insufficient provision on parking. Well, we've supplied a parking map, but in response, this is what Health CC Highways said in their report. However, should suitable mitigation be provided and the local planning authority is minded to approve this application, which you can do, a number of conditions should be applied. So I've already talked about the conditions, so that's the stuff around maximum group sizes and frequency of visits. Here are our mitigation measures. We work with small groups, they're pre-booked, traffic is modest, it's not significant at all, and we manage it. We use a traffic management plan, so we're in contact with the groups arriving and leaving by phone. This traffic management plan has been up and running for 18 months. And it works. In 18 months, we've only had one instance where an exiting minibus met with a refuse lorry. Because traffic is light and controlled, we do have sufficient parking, there is actually no risk to other users of public rights of way. They're all around us, and there are the ones along the access track. There's no risk at all. And Kirsty's mentioned safety. We postpone activity when it's freezing. Past precedent, this is my conclusion now. Past precedent on planning applications does not automatically predetermine a new application. This application is radically different to previous applications at Harvest Farm. They were for open access businesses. You can't control the traffic. Ours is restricted and it's intentionally small. Activity is pre-booked, numbers are limited, resulting traffic is modest. We've done this on purpose. There are several natural passing places where vehicles pass safely. Can I just say this?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, I normally ask you to stop now, but the others, well, when I say the other side, the people that objected had 13 minutes, so I'm going to give you an extra minute, and that balances your 13 minutes then each.
Thank you very much. There are natural passing places where vehicles could naturally pass safely. These areas are actually blocked by obstacles which have been placed there by the Bowkers from Jerusalem Farm. Were these obstacles removed, vehicles passing higher up the drive than Jerusalem Farm would never need to interrupt the Bowkers at all. Could these obstacles be removed? It'd certainly solve a problem. Can I just say as well, children love the environment and the animals because they learn to do that with us. The kind of children that we're working with would never ever otherwise have access to the countryside in the way that they do when they come to us. And that's it. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I, before I bring our planning manager in for his comments, just thank all the speakers for being concise and bearing with me. And I apologise if I had to start cutting people off, which I didn't, thankfully. So can I, before I invite councillors, ask our planning manager, Neil Watson. Neil, if you've got any additional comments, I know you've given us an updated report, which hopefully councillors will have read, which addresses, but your recommendation still on the first application stays as refusal. So I'm going to ask you to comment on the first application, Neil, because I'm going to deal with them separately when it comes to elected members. So, Neil, anything you want to say on the first one?
Chairman, before I do that, we've had two additional late letters in, which I need to mention. Chairman, one related to unauthorised works there, so it doesn't have a bearing on the merits of the application. The other letter referred to biodiversity issues, which I think are fully covered in the report and supplementary documents. So, Chairman, nothing new in my view from those, but I need to mention two extra letters, Chairman. Chairman, I'm not going to speak because I think that the issues at any length, the issues are there. Chairman, there have been red herrings spoken about tonight in terms of what may happen in future, what the application may or may not be. My advice to members is that just deal with this based on what is being applied for. Okay, not what may have happened, not what the intentions are, but what is being applied for. And that's clearly set out in each application in the papers. But I would correct Mrs. Taylor and Miss Taylor, whichever, on one point. The application is for a campground. It wasn't linked to this. So it may be offering that now to have a condition to link it, but it wasn't applied for as such. The application wording is as submitted, Chairman. Chairman, I've got one point to make on the track about interpreting policy, which do you want me to mention that now, Chairman, or do you want me to come back when you deal with that application?
We'll deal with that on that one, Neil, if that's okay.
That's all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'm I have an indication to speak from a guest councillor this evening, Councillor Tony Greaves.
Thank you, Chair. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
After we'd discussed this at the committee, I thought it would be a good idea to go and have a look. And I had the privilege of not only being able to go and look at the site and the approach track, which I think quite a lot of people have done, but also to actually see a school group there a couple of days ago, actually in the wood itself at the end of the track, and to observe what was going on. I should say this was not one of the groups of disadvantaged children from the alternative school or wherever. It was a local school who'd taken advantage of the ability to go take half a class there for a day, and to I think there were 3 teachers there and 12 primary school children. I've got some experience of having young people, of being involved with young people out in the countryside, and all I can say, and doing teaching things and doing general, what in my day I would have called scouting things, I think, or guiding things. But I have to say, I was very impressed. I was impressed with the professionalism of everybody there. I also discovered that one of the teachers from the school was somebody I used to teach about 40 years ago. It's nice to meet somebody I used to teach who wasn't retired yet. I just want to say that I think this application should be passed. I understand the problems of the access. It's not ideal. Nobody pretends it's ideal. I'll put this as easily and carefully as I can, as discreetly as I can. I believe that the people at Jerusalem Farm, the people who live at Jerusalem Farm, are in some ways their own worst enemies. As I think Jill Taylor said, the access could be made much better. The real problem is the access between Jerusalem Farm and the cattle grid, which is another halfway, a bit more, onto Harvey's farm. The way in which people at Jerusalem Farm have clearly been doing their best to obstruct the access to Harvey's, I think is not helpful. And I understand there are neighbour disputes all over the place, etc. But as I said at the Cone Committee, whatever the results of this planning application, I think it would help if means were found to mediate between the residents at these 2 places and find solutions. And I really am very sorry indeed. My daughter used to go to Jerusalem Farm to ride horses, I think. But I'm very sorry indeed that they feel that they have to pull out all the stops to prevent what is happening at Harvey's. And the other thing I would say is that my recommendation would be, if I were a member of your committee, to ask Mr. Watson to go away and look at the conditions very carefully and to draw them as tightly as he possibly can to restrict them to educational use in its broadest sense, not necessarily from schools, but to tie it down so it cannot become a general campsite. It cannot become a place where things are put on simply for people to go in their cars on a Sunday afternoon and do whatever they want to do. That it is actually restricted to education, and that the planning permission cannot go beyond that. I am particularly interested in the initiative to work with the Cone Youth Forum on some of the problems that we are having in Cone with youth at the moment, and we all know what those are. And if those people can go out to this place, because the idea that a place like this cannot be used because it's not served by buses. There's no bus stop on the site. There's no railway station on the site, which is implied by Mr. Watson's first condition, I think. First reason for possible refusal. It's nonsense. This is a wild place. It's a place which is high up in the hills. It's quite a wild place, and it's different from anything that can ever be provided in the towns. We can provide things in parks, we can provide things in green open spaces in the towns, but to take children out into the real wild countryside like this and do appropriate activities, I think is highly desirable. And it is only by projects like this that kind of opportunity can be provided to many of the most disadvantaged children and those who, if we're not careful, will turn into adults with a lot of behaviour that we don't want to see. We've got to get them by the children, and this is one of the ways in which this can be done. So I understand all the countervailing arguments about access, which is not ideal, but it's not impossible. And I think that the advantage of this should prevail.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Greaves. I have an indication to speak from Councillor Brian Newman. Brian?
Good evening, Chair. I've been listening very intently to what's been on the forum tonight. I think we should look at what this is all about, which is the planning application for an educational purpose for children, for disadvantaged.
Brian, you've just muted yourself.
So is that okay? Right, and
yeah.
As I say, we are looking at the planning application, not whether it's in the right place, wrong place, or whatever. And this is for disadvantaged children. I have to say that we in Fence have just approved an application for a very similar thing in Newchurch, and I will support this application. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I've got Councillor D. Mohammed, but before I bring other speakers in, I'll put my 2 pence in as well. I mean, the first thing is, I think somebody's... Brian, you need to mute yourself because you're echoing back to me. That's it, thank you. I mean, the first thing is that
we should be all right now. Okay.
Yeah. Brian, just put yourself on mute.
Right, okay, will do.
Thank you. As I was saying, I went out yesterday, and I'm grateful to our planning for assisting me in finding the correct location yesterday. But one of the first things that I'd say is that, I mean, you know, I live in an urban area. I was born and brought up in an urban area, and I live in Nelson, where my luxury when I was growing up, going to camp school for a week. And, you know, it's a long time ago when I went to camp school. But even now, I can still remember the week that I had, and it generally was an experience of a lifetime that will stay with me until the day that I leave this world. So when I drove up yesterday, and when myself and Neil in our separate cars to maintain social distancing parked up, you know, I saw the wildlife that was there, and what really was going on there. It actually brought back memories for me going back to camp school. And I think the point that Councillor Greaves made, that a lot of children in this day and age, and as councillors, we come across some really difficult families, some really challenging youngsters who are living in very difficult family circumstances. And I've done my own research on what Jill and people like Kirsty do to support disadvantaged young people. And, you know, I congratulate them for the work that they do. You know, I've never met these people before, but reading some of the literature that I've read over the last few weeks, I'm really impressed that here in Pendle we have an establishment that does work with those children that mainstream education would sometimes just either forget about, not through any fault of their own, or those children feel that they are alienated from the mainstream education system. And I think this is one opportunity where urban Pendle could really capitalise on working with rural Pendle and some of the things that go on, for example, up at the farm that have previously gone on that I've read about, I've not actually witnessed myself, I think are commendable, and this is where Pendle needs to come together. So I'm aware that there are traffic issues. You know, for example, myself and Neil drove up yesterday, had to wait a few minutes for a tractor and a guy that was putting, I think, soil into the back of a tipper to move past the cattle grid so we could pass. But I'm aware that we've had some additional information around some of the traffic management issues that could be put in place. And what I'm minded to move, if colleagues would bear with me, is that we delegate grant consent in this application to Neil Watson as our planning manager, for him to, as Councillor Greaves has said, really put some conditions in that protect some of the fears, and whether they're right or wrong, I'm not here to judge any of the fears from the residents that have spoken against the application, but I basically make the application watertight, that that we're not exploited as a council by hopefully granting the application tonight. So that's the reason that I'm going to move that we delegate grant consent, because I think if we were having a debate as a committee tonight, we could be here all evening trying to agree the conditions, and I've every confidence in our planning manager coming up with the conditions, taking into account what people have said, looking at the actual realities. But I think this is an opportunity that in 5, 10, 15 years' time, youngsters that are at the age that I was when I went to camp school will look back and say, you know what, that committee made a decision for my future. And I think generally it will benefit kids across Pendle growing up. It will actually give them the opportunities that the likes of me never had. I turned out the way that I was, hopefully in a good way. But you know, those kids that potentially are on the track that have got the potential to fall off, I think by working with organisations like this can actually grow up, mature as good adults, and certainly help Pendle to become a better place. So I'm going to move that as a recommendation that we delegate grant consent. I've got indication to speak from various councillors, but before I bring any of them in, I need somebody to, well, hopefully to second what I've moved, and then I'll progress the debate.
I'll second it, Councillor Paul.
Okay, who's that? Second?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's fine. Okay, next speaker I've got on this is Councillor Nadeem Ahmed. Then I've got Councillor David Whip, and then Councillor Sarah Corbin Price. So Nadeem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In terms of the comments which have been made by the people in favour of the application, and comments made by...
Nadeem, just bear with us. There's somebody that's not muted. I can't see who it is, but Nadeem's voice is echoing back. So if you're not on mute, can you please check and make yourself on mute? Sorry, Nadeem.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, in terms of the comments made regarding this site and its use for young people, young disadvantaged people, comments made by Councillor Greaves, yourself, Councillor Newman, and those in favour of the application. I think the focus is on the young people, and I couldn't disagree with any of the comments made in terms of trying to help these young people improve and increase their opportunities in life. The comments made by the people opposing the application seem to focus on what I would say are planning matters, whereas the arguments in favour of approving the application seem to be focused on the young people and the benefits that it would bring, which, like I said, I don't doubt for 1 second. And I just want to ask a simple question through you, Mr. Chairman, to our planning manager. Neil, the question is, in terms of the arguments raised as to why we should be approving this application, the focus seems to be all around young people and the benefits it would bring to the young people, which I don't think any of us will dispute. But can we take that into consideration on in terms of planning?
Through you, Chairman. Yes, you can. It is material what benefits that the any development would have in the community. You have to balance that against the other material considerations, and then obviously apply the development plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, can I just come back in? Yes, I wasn't clear as to whether that would be or could be taken into consideration, which is why I asked the question. So I think what I'll do is now I'm going to stay quiet and listen to the rest of the debate, because I think it is a difficult balancing exercise that we have before us, because we've got the recommendation of Neil, which is saying refusal, and the arguments as to why, particularly on highways. I do have my concerns, but I'm going to reserve judgment until I've heard the rest of the debate. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nadeem. Next, I've got Councillor David Webb. David.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just address the issue of sustainability, because I thought Councillor Greaves put this quite neatly. Bonalswick is largely urban, but with ready access to open countryside. Colne, to a similar extent but lesser, and Nelson, more urban still. And clearly, for sustainability, you're looking at those very urban areas in which to have that public transport access and the like. And in a sense, I think if that is something that's enshrined within the decisions of Pendle Council, then we're condemning people in urban areas to playing on the back streets, because there isn't the opportunity to access that wild woodland that there is in this application side. So I think it would be a nonsense to refuse this application on those rather spurious grounds. We've discussed the access track. I visited Councillor Tom Whip, piloted, and I did a video. Well, I think a lot of the committee have been up, and they know what the conditions are like. I do agree that the neighbouring landowners, it could help to create better conditions for everyone, including themselves. And, that obviously isn't within the control of the applicant, but it's something that is at the back of my mind. So, Chairman, I would support delegating approval, subject to the tightening around educational use. And I genuinely believe that the amount of traffic, I think traffic is probably too strong a word, the number of vehicles accessing the educational establishment is so minimal as not to pose the risk that has been put forward by objectors. There, I think other things have already been said, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next, I've got Councillor Sarah Corbin Price. Sarah.
Thank you. Some of you may know, I know that you do, Councillor Iqbal, that I am also very concerned about young people in Colne, and it has been a problem. We are the not a good title to have, the antisocial behaviour capital of Lancashire, and it's not a title I would like Colne to continue with. But do not doubt for one second, just as Councillor Ahmed and the other speakers said, I do not doubt the good work that's done. I don't. But I am looking very closely here on page 7, the National Planning Policy Framework, and we are bound by the document. Here we are, talking paragraph 83, paragraph 84, all about sustainability, all about no feasible access by public transport, no feasible scope for access by foot, and severely restricted cycle access. It's certainly true, we're talking things on the top of a hill. No matter, I see Councillor Greaves is incredibly fit. It is on the top of a hill. It's a long way, and I'm just looking at that and just thinking, well, LCC objected for a reason, and we do try. We sometimes disagree with LCC at Cone Area Committee or at P&R perhaps, but we do try to follow their objections because they are the Highways Authority. And, you know, they even go further. They say it would be difficult to practically enforce pre-booked access. You know, that they say it would be hard to keep focus on that. Passing places on the section would be necessary, but the land is outside control of the applicants. And then, you know, looking at the sort of summing up, which is an unacceptable risk to other users of the public rights of way who walk along the access routes, and it's contrary to policy. This is our policy, Pendle Borough Council, ENV4 of the Pendle Local Plan Part 1. So we're in that position again, aren't we, on this committee? I'm sure that's why it's here, where we're looking at what our policies are and what the national policy is, and seemingly we are being told, albeit that we see all the positives, you know, some of you may know that I'm hoping to start a facility in Cone, which doesn't have all of the benefits of the countryside around it, but it does have, you can walk from your house straight there, you know, several times a week. So it has the ultimate sustainability aspect, and that's on Byron Road. But we're looking at something here that is clearly contrary to both Pendle's policy and the MPPF. And no matter how positive we feel about the work done, I can see Councillor Greaves shaking his head again. No matter how positive we feel, we have to look at that. That is our role as councillors. And so I would be moving refusal.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. I have Paul Foxley indicating that he wants to speak. Paul, are you seconding Sarah, or do I need to seek a seconder?
Yes, I will second Sarah on that.
Okay.
Yes.
That's fine. And you wanted to speak as well, Paul?
I did, please, yes. Well, first of all, I'd like to just pick up on what Councillor Newman said about planning applications shouldn't be determined on whether a location is appropriate. I wholeheartedly disagree with that, and it's fundamental. A fundamental part of any application, whether the location is suitable. And this application, as has been said by everybody on both sides of the argument, all councillors, I think, agree on the benefits of such a facility in Pendle or anywhere else. I'm absolutely in agreement with that. There are clear benefits of providing services like this, but I have very grave concerns about the proposal due to the highways aspect. And it isn't just about what happens on the track. It's what happens on even if it is only the odd occasion when somebody meets a refuse vehicle coming the other way, or somebody meets the lodger coming out in his car or her car, or somebody meets a delivery van, or the delivery van meets somebody coming out in a minibus, whichever. My concern is that there is a definite highway issue here, because what can happen is that a vehicle can end up reversing out onto Skipton Old Road. And knowing Skipton Old Road as well as I do, then that would be a potentially catastrophic incident. And I do not support a proposal which relies on such a flimsy approach to supposedly overcoming that highway issue. The idea that has been suggested that the neighbours could easily, the neighbours at Jerusalem Farm could easily allow passing places on their land may be true, but the simple fact is that neither the applicant nor this council has any what's the word I'm looking for? We don't have any control over what the neighbour does with their own land. We cannot. Nobody in this in this evening's meeting could force a neighbour to do something with their land. That is completely outside of the control of, as I say, of either this council or the applicant. And to kid ourselves that things might suddenly change, that I agree that sometimes disputes can be resolved, and if this is indeed a dispute between neighbours, then these things can sometimes be resolved. My wife has a great deal of experience of dealing with such things successfully, but not always. And I do not believe that we could pass a planning permission or planning application on the basis of a hope that something like that might happen. So I think any notion of passing places miraculously appearing should be not be part of our consideration tonight. And overall, I'm afraid to say that on balance, I do not believe that the benefits of this proposal outweigh the highway safety issue. And I do believe there's a serious highway safety issue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. I've got hands up from Neil and David. Neil, is yours a new hand or an old hand?
Chairman, it's a clarification on your proposal, but can we? I'm happy to wait before the vote's taken on that, Chairman. I just want to clarify one point.
Do you want to clarify it now then?
Yes, it was to do with the cob. If your proposal goes through and it's approved, Chairman, would it be that we would condition out the use of the Cobb lane access? Chairman, I drove that yesterday. I think it's horrendous, and I would recommend that if it is approved, that it's conditioned that is not used.
That's fine. That's why I was bound to your common sense approach, Neil, giving you authority. I've got Councillor David Whip, and then I'm going to move to the vote. David?
Well, Chairman, I just want to comment on the amendment and Councillor Foxley's assertion that vehicles would have to back out onto Skipton Old Road. And I just want to share this on screen, which I hope that's coming up now. So I mentioned that Councillor Tom Whip and I site visited yesterday, and we turned in off Skipton Old Road. I was in the passenger seat, and I did video the journey, and this is as we turn in to the off Skipton Old Road into the track to Jerusalem Farm and beyond. And as you can see, the immediate access onto Skipton Old Road is more than wide enough for two vehicles. So there would be no need at any point for a vehicle to reverse out onto Skipton Old Road. So I don't think that's a legitimate concern. I understand that Councillor Foxley may have that concern, but in reality, I think the width of that junction is sufficient to afford enough space for passing traffic.
Okay, thank you, David. Want to take your screen off, and I can see everything.
Well, I'm desperately trying to, but it won't. I've lost you now. Where are you? There you go. Sorry.
You need the ID department of the Whip household to sort.
No. It was just, sort of faced with three screens here that sort of bursting out all over.
Okay. Can I thank all the elected members, councillors, for your contribution? So I'm going to move to the vote. It's a straight vote. So you're either in favour of the delegating grant consent to Mr. Watson, or you're against, and the against is based on the recommendations as set out on the report. So I'll call each councillor's name out. If you could just unmute yourself and indicate whether you're for, against, or wish to abstain. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Aslam.
Against.
Councillor David Clegg.
For.
Councillor Sarah Corbin Price.
Against.
Councillor Tommy Cooney.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Foxley.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Mohammed Iqbal. For. Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Ashjad Mahmood.
For.
Councillor Brian Newman.
For.
Councillor Jonathan Nixon.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Saqib.
For.
Councillor David Whip.
For.
Thank you. I don't think I've missed anybody in terms of voting. So, Jane, I get that 7 in favour, 6 against.
I would agree.
Thank you very much. So the application is delegated to be approved, subject to Mr. Watson agreeing the conditions with the applicant. The next application is the formation of an access track. We've heard from the public speakers, and I think we've had a debate. Neil, did you want to clarify something on this? I remember you saying earlier on.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just one point, and it was in reference to a comment made about the local nature reserves and what you must consider. And it was slightly, in my view, misquoted because it was weighing the benefits of a case against safeguarding nature conservation. That only is a requirement for you to consider if the development is likely to adversely affect the established interests of the local nature reserve. If it is not likely to impact on the established interests, you do not have to then do that test. Now, Chairman, you've got the views of your Environment Officer, Mr. Johnson, saying that he's satisfied that with conditions it will not affect the nature interests of the site. So, Chairman, in my view, the balancing test that was set out is, to use the legal phrase, is not engaged. So you don't have to consider unless you think there's a nature impact, you don't have to consider the benefits against the nature impacts. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. David, I've got a hand up from yourself.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, the access track is more in my neck of the woods than it is in Conan district, because the parish boundary and the ward boundary and the boundary between the different area committees runs along that wall line. So yes, part of the access track is in that foreign land, and part of it is within Kelbrook. And so, Chairman, the greater part of it is in Kelbrook. So I'm more than happy to take a lead on this and propose that this is approved, subject to the conditions set out in the report. I think, balancing up the fresh planting that's gone on, the diversity, the biological benefit that there is far outweighed by any detriment that the track will cause, and I don't honestly see that it causes any great detriment anyway. So I move.
Okay, I'm happy to second the recommendation. Next, I've got Councillor Jonathan Nixon. Jonathan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's a dead quick question on the ecology, actually, just coincidentally following on from Councillor Webb. And I wanted to ask this on the previous application, but I'll ask it now. On page 5, there's a few paragraphs on ecology. And I've just got a question. It says the report addresses the concerns of the council's environment officer in relation to the ground flora within the woodland, which the report details has changed since the area was designated a biological heritage site and is no longer species rich. What has happened to what has changed about it, and why has it changed? Does anybody know? Since it was designated a biological heritage site, what's happened to the ground flora mentioned in the report? Thank you, Chair.
Neil, are you able to help? Otherwise, I've got Gillian Taylor sticking a hand up. I can ask her the answer if you don't know.
Well, Chairman, basically what was there 10 years, the basic answer, what was there 10 years ago in terms of the flora and fauna has changed, it's altered. So it's become less diverse and less species rich. I'm no expert on this, so I can't tell you exactly what species that's mentioned in the report, but effectively the type and nature of plants there has changed, and it's less species rich and is less important now, and that's just changed over that 10-year period.
Chair, can I just come back on that, please, dead quick?
Yeah.
Do you mind? So it's been the path. I'm get what Neil is saying, but I think the point I was trying to make is it was designated a BHS at some point in the past for a particular reason, and that reason is probably because the ground flora has developed, I presume, over generations, perhaps hundreds of years. I don't really know. And for it to go in 10 years, why is it just disappeared in 10 years? There are people on here who are far more.
Okay, Jonathan, I'll use Chairman's discretion. And Jill, can you help us? Can you help Jonathan and the rest of us with that answer, please, and try and be succinct?
I'll be succinct. Right, in the woodland management plan, that research was done ages ago, 10, 20 years ago. I think one thing is it's not just the woodland, it's all that area. Overgrazing by livestock at some point, and also the fact that it's been unmanaged woodland and environment isn't necessarily biodiverse. So my countryside stewardship has got loads of things that I'm doing to bring that biodiversity back up by management techniques. Is that succinct enough?
It is, thank you. Jonathan, you okay now?
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
All right, cheers. Next, I've got Sarah indicated to speak. Sarah?
Thank you. I mentioned this at Cone Area Committee, and that's just because months ago now, and before this ecologist report was submitted, Councillor Margaret Foxley and I were given a session on peat and upland peat within biological heritage sites, and we had maps and we had a full lecture on it, and talking about the importance that peat isn't drained. And of course, peat has been an awful lot in the news recently, hasn't it, as a sort of carbon capture thing. And he just pointed out to us months ago that a track cut through could have the potential of forming a watercourse and draining the peat. And this report says that there could be mitigation around the track. And as I understand it, this would require Pendle Council to hire a hydrologist to give us technical ways of trying to pump the water back into the peat. Is that correct, Neil?
Chairman, I can't honestly answer that.
Right, that's what I understood anyway. And I was just wondering, and you couldn't answer that, you know, is that going to be expensive? These mitigations in terms of draining the peat, if the peat drainage is still a thing. I'm just concerned because, you know, Lee months ago gave Margaret and I this detailed briefing.
I mean, obviously, I don't know the answer to what you're asking, Sarah, but had that been a possibility, I assume the planning or Neil would have incorporated it into his report as part of the conditions. I'm getting Jill sticking her hand up, so again, I'll exercise my discretion. And Jill, if you can help us with that, please.
Yeah, well, the ecologist report said that actually it improves the hydrology having the track. And in terms of the peat and the sphagnum bog in there, retaining the water runoff is absolutely minimal from our land. There are so many bogs, that's where I lose most of the children. So please don't worry about any hydrology issues with that track.
Thanks. Sarah, is there anything else you need to add?
No, thank you.
Okay. Jonathan, you still got your hand up. Is that an old hand?
Old hand, I removed, Chair.
Old hand. I can't see anybody else indicating to speak, so we have one proposal on the table moved by Councillor Webb, seconded by myself, to go with the officer recommendations. Again, I will read your name out. If you're in favour of it, you say yes or whatever. If you're against, and if you want to abstain, abstain. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Aslam.
Against.
Councillor David Clegg.
For.
Councillor Sarah Corbin Price.
Against.
Councillor Tommy Cooney.
Against.
Councillor Paul Foxley.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Mohammed Iqbal. I'm for. Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Ashad Mahmood.
For.
Councillor Brian Newman. You're muted, Brian.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Jonathan Nixon.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Saqib.
For.
And Councillor David Webb.
For.
Thank you. Jane, I make that 7 in favour, 6 against.
Yes, I would agree again.
Thank you very much. So that application is approved as well. So can I thank all those people that have been with us this evening in terms of those two applications. You're more than welcome to stop for the rest of the meeting, but if you want to leave, you just need to exit the meeting and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very much for your time. Okay, colleagues, the next planning application that we've got
Sarah Wattmore
is now exiting.
Is the erection of a 2-storey side extension and part single-storey extension, formation of car parking at number 3 Clegg Street. This was referred to us from Briarfield Area Committee as they approved it, recommended approval, and the planning manager has, or the legal eagles have sent it here as a significant departure from policy. I have a speaker on this, and that's Mohammed Asham. Are you still with us, Asham?
I am, yes.
You are. Okay, you've got up to a maximum of 5 minutes in which to address the committee. The floor's yours.
Okay. Thanks for letting me on. I'm okay to share the screen with you if that's okay.
If you can, you can.
Yep. Perfect. So we've purchased a property as a first-time buyer to move into the Briarfield area. The reason for purchasing the property is obviously to house family, and obviously the reason for the extension is to allow for the additional bedroom, and obviously, as you guys can understand, the need for a home office, which for the type of work that we do is essential, and to have a home office in a separate space, a private space, just to allow you to be a bit more professional when you are working and obviously talking to your colleagues and customers as such in the type of work that I do. The property was purchased taking into account the area and also the possibility of extension based on, obviously completely understand each application is on merit, but there was a property which is literally further up, very similar to more or less the same property, same type of property. And it had given planning permission to do a double-story side, a double-story back, and single-story back as well. So a part double, part single at the back. It faced a bungalow as well, which is similar to number 3 Clegg Street, which is the proposal. And obviously, before purchasing and before doing the application, we went round to the residents, asked questions, see what they would think if we would put this type of proposal forward, and everything was in the positive, no objections, no concerns. So we went ahead with the purchase, we went ahead with the planning application, and then obviously we come to some kind of issues where it was some issues with everything was fine in regards to the double-story side and the single-story at the back. The only issue we had is the double-story part on the rear part of the building. And the reason for that is they said that it's a back-to-back extension. So the back of the extension faces the back of the property opposite. So what you can see, hopefully, on what I'm sharing, you can see the rear extension, what it faces on the bungalow opposite. So obviously that is a concern for the planning team. So moving on from that, I just want to obviously give you some pictures so you can see exactly what's proposed and what the application was put in, taking into account obviously the property on top of the street. So this picture you see now is the bungalow that faces the extension at number 35 Clegg Street. 35 Clegg Street is the property on top of the street, which has had approval and has been built. So it's got the double-story side extension, and it's got the part double, part single at the rear.
I can't actually see anything. I'm not sure about anybody else. No, they're all shaking their head.
Just 1 second. Oh, sorry, it's gone somewhere. Give me 1 second. I'll just get it back up.
All I can see, all I can see is a duplication of the committee. I mean, it's okay. You can just talk.
Yeah. So, the bungalow which faces the extension at number 35, it's been granted planning permission and it's been built. And the reason why I've got a concern in regards to why it's not being accepted on the property that I've proposed is because it's a front of the property, so it's a rear to front extension. It's got a front door there. It's got part of the lounge window, and it also got part of it's got a bathroom window there as well. And it's basically the extension we are proposing for number 3 Clegg Street is a much less scale than the proposal at number 35. That's a much bigger extension, much closer in distance. And obviously the reason that we've got issues with the planning proposal that they've mentioned is because they deem to think that 35 Clegg Street, the side of the property that faces the extension, is a side elevation. But I can't understand how it can be a side elevation when the front door is literally there, the lounge window is there, and the bathroom window is there.
Mr. We need to start wrapping up. I've given you an extra minute.
That's fine. And obviously the extension at 35 also has 4 windows on the first floor, whereas the one which is being proposed at number 3 Clegg Street is only going to have 2. And there's differences in distances as well. So the property at number 35 is only 7 meters away from the bungalow that it faces. And the extension that we're proposing at number 3 Clegg Street is a distance of 9.5 meters at the shortest point and 11.6 meters at the furthest point because of the angle that both properties are at. And that's massively more than Clegg Street. So obviously it's difficult to kind of understand where the proposal has been rejected on one point and the precedence which has been set at number 35 has been accepted, where the distances are on number 33 is nearly 70 or 80% further away than the property it faces.
I've given you almost 7 minutes now, so if you've got one last closing word.
Yeah, it's just the fact that obviously the necessity of having the additional office space, the president set at number 35 Clegg Street, and one being a back-to-back and one being a back-to-front extension, it should be a very similar outcome, and hopefully we can come to that conclusion.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Mr. Asham. Before I bring councillors in, Neil, is there anything that you need to add to advise the committee?
No, Chairman, I'll just share that which illustrates the relationship. Chairman, regardless of what happens at 35 Clegg Street, that is, in planning terms, completely unacceptable and contrary to our planning guidance, Chairman. Whatever the circumstance at 35 Clegg Street, that's not, in my view, a reason to approve something which is quite clearly completely unacceptable.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Okay, I've got, in the order that I can see, I've got Councillor Aschad Mahmood, followed by Sarah Corbin Price, and then Councillor David Whip. Aschad?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, as mentioned, this application has come from Bradfield and Reedley Area Committee, and the applicant has spoken. Obviously, again, the report kind of talks about that the property extension has been reduced in size, and I think it was this Policy and Resource Committee that approved number 35. I know that the comparison has been made there, and that kind of pretty much the precedent has been set in the sense this property extension is pretty much exactly similar, if not the same, to what has been already been approved and been built on. The bungalow again on that's at the back of this property that's been proposed is I think it's at an oblique angle. So again, it's pretty much, like I say, if not the same, it's probably very similar. And you've got the similar views, and the distance is actually shorter at number 35 than this property, where I think in the report it mentions 12 metres. I know the gentleman said it's 9 metres, but the report is saying it's 12 metres. So 7 metres and 12 metres is a big difference. And for that reason, I will move a recommendation to approve the application. Thank you, Chair.
Before I bring Sarah in, who I assume is not going to second Aschad, do I have a seconder for Aschad's proposition?
I'll second that, Chair. And can I speak at some point as well? It's Councillor Iqbal.
Right, yeah, so I'll bring you in later on. Next, I've got Councillor Sarah Corbin Price. Sarah?
I accept my role on this committee as the Cassandra of planning, but I think the last councillor very clearly stated the problem with not following the guidelines. He said, this committee set a precedent last time. I'm afraid that is why we have to stop this and say, no, we're not going to carry on setting a precedent. We're going to say 7 metres is the length of a car. I've stood with Neil at developments in Trawden, and he said, oh, it's perfectly acceptable. It's 21 metres, it's 23 metres. And I've looked at it and it seems right next to it to me. I'm sure he's right. I haven't argued with him. But seven, My son's nearly 7 metres tall, if any of you have seen him. It's ridiculous. I don't think...
Sarah, I don't think your son will be 7 metres.
I was jesting. He's 2 metres tall. I was jesting. 3 of my sons, 3 and a bit of my sons. So I feel that this committee should stick to the guidelines, make sure that we don't set a precedent, and I propose that we refuse this application.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I've got Councillor David Whip next. David, are you seconding the refusal, or?
I am, and I think we regularly rehearse this debate about what happens in one part of Pendle affects the whole of Pendle, and clearly if something is unacceptable, we don't want to be laying down precedent after precedent after precedent that then means that we can't reject things in other parts of the borough which are not acceptable. So, yeah, I'm seconding refusal.
Okay, then I've got our guest speaker tonight, Councillor Paul Foxley, wishes he was never away. Paul?
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to, I know that clearly number 35, whether it is similar or not, isn't a particular concern, but I would, in terms of its import in making this decision, but I would say, and I must say that I've looked very closely at both of these properties, and with some interest. And number 35 is a completely different circumstance. The extension may be larger. The property before it was extended may be identical. None of that is relevant. The fact is that whether a layperson sees it that way or not, the property behind number 35 doesn't back onto it, doesn't front onto it. It offers a side elevation to it, and the fact that that property, that bungalow, has a side entrance is, it doesn't make that the front of the property. The whole thing about the planning issue about overlooking and all of that is about people being able to enjoy the habitable rooms in their homes without somebody in a habitable room in the next home seeing every minute detail of what they do, which clearly would be completely unacceptable. So the fact that you may face somebody's front door or their obscured glass bathroom window is quite rightly not the issue, not an issue in that kind of circumstance. What we have here is completely different. It is a two-storey extension bearing down.
Sorry, just bear with me, Paul. Mr. Asham, you can't share any photos now, so I'd ask you to please.
Oh, sorry, it's decided to work. I'll take it off. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, please, if you could.
Number 3, Clegg Street is at a higher level already, and the separation distance is substandard by today's standard already. So any two-storey extension on that, as it says in the report, any two-storey extension on the back of that property would be problematic. I have sympathy with the applicant if he's been misadvised, but if it's only misadvised by a neighbour, then it's just one of those things, isn't it? I'm really sorry if he's not able to do what he's set out to do in buying that property, but we cannot be in a position where we set a precedent for the rest of Pendle. And I'm quite clear in my mind that there isn't already a precedent set by the property just up the road. He's merely misunderstood the rules that apply, unfortunately. So I will not be supporting the application. I'll be supporting refusal.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Yasser, I've got you next.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think Councillor Mahmood has made some of the points, the salient points that I was going to refer to. But as the only member of the Briarfield and Real Area Committee present at this meeting, I think it's important just to refer to some of the salient points which were referred to at the last meeting, and the applicant has referred to some of them as well. Now, much was made about 35 Clegg Street at our previous meeting, and if anybody has been to see the site, and it's evident from some of the comments made by some of the councillors that some of them have attended the site. 35 Clegg Street came to this committee, and in fact it was Briarfield and Real Area Committee that recommended refusal for that application, and which is why it came to this committee and it was therefore approved. And one of the issues was that we argued at the Briarfield Area Committee for that application was that we thought it was quite a large extension, but the council's officer, the planning officer at that point, argued that actually it wasn't. Now, when one compares 35 Clegg Street to the application that we're looking at now, in my view, and this is just my view, that 35 Clegg Street is perhaps more overbearing than 3 Clegg Street. And one of the reasons that it was refused was because there was a lot of objection from neighbouring properties, and in fact, even along Walter Street, who face this property. I haven't seen, and I stand to be corrected, I haven't seen any objections. Certainly none were received at the last committee meeting, either in writing or in person. And I think, Chair, that when one looks at the Clegg Street application and this is perhaps less overbearing, and the applicants referred to some of the distance issues, 7 metres for 35 Clegg Street and up to 9.5 metres at the 3 Clegg Street application. So I think there are distinct differences here that we look at. Now, I second, if I haven't done so already, I think I have. If I haven't, I second Councillor Mahmood's motion for approval.
Okay, next I've got Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
Chair, I think Neil had his hand up. Could we let Neil speak first, if that's okay? Just want to see what Neil says.
There you
in
go.
Case it's something
giving way to you.
Chairman, just a point, just to echo what Councillor Foxley said on this, they're not comparable relationships. The 35 Clegg Street looks onto a side elevation. There is a door, but the door isn't a principal window, and there's the side of a window which is like a bay window there. So the relationships and impacts to use Councillor Fox's words, are not comparable here. Here, this extension is looking directly onto principal rear windows. So you're not comparing eggs with eggs when you compare the relationship between the two. And as I recall the debate on Clegg Street, it wasn't about impacts on privacy, it was about design. And that's an end property with its own garden space. So the issues there that were debated at the time were different. So, Chairman, I'm quite clear that they're not comparable here. There's absolutely no precedent set with 35 Clegg Street because it does not look at directly onto principal rear windows, which this application site does. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Neil. Nadeem?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've been outside the site and seen the application and the other site, which Neil has just referred to at number 35, and this particular site as well in terms of the proposals and the drawings which are being put forward. I do understand the applicant did put in amended plans to make this development smaller, if I'm correct. between the initial meeting and now. Am I correct? Was it before the Bryfield Committee?
Chairman, there have been some minor variations, but the principal issue we've had and the discussions we've had have been about the two-storey rear extension, and that remains. And that's always been, Catherine, to be fair, has had lots of discussions with the applicant, but she's been very clear that the principal issue here is that rear extension. That hasn't really, well, that hasn't altered.
Yeah, in terms of, I take your point, Neil, in terms of you saying we can't compare 35 to this particular application, but in terms of the argument being put forward that the precedent has been set, I mean, that was, in my view, from the drawings and seeing and the actual development which has taken place, a larger development than that's being proposed for this particular item. And I think the applicant's done as much as possible in their power to try and work with the planning department. They've reduced the site as much as practically possible for them to continue to gain some benefit from the development. And I do believe they've been totally reasonable in terms of what's being proposed. They have, for example, said that they're going to obscure the back windows to counteract the privacy issues. My view is this development should be allowed to proceed. I do recall at the previous, I know we keep referring back to the previous development, but there was a huge argument because this same committee was arguing the other way around at that committee. So, I mean, we're talking about consistency of decisions. And if you want to follow that argument, I think this committee itself hasn't been consistent.
Are you done, Nadeem?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Who have I got? Councillor Saki, have you got your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to ask a question to Neil Watson. If the development was up to 3 meter deep, the back of houses, would he require planning permission? Would it fall under permission?
Chairman, there are different rules to that about eaves height, etc., locations of boundary. Chairman, I think it's, without being too curt, it's a bit unfair to put me on the spot to say whether some other development may or may not need consent. In fact, I won't answer that because we're looking at obviously the merits of this case.
Yeah, that's fine, Neil. Mr. Chairman, my understanding is, provided that he is not covering 50% of the garden area, building extension 3 meter deep would not require a planning permission. Now, what he is asking, this gentleman, is a 3.85 meter deep. So he's asking only a 0.8 meter, which is less than 3 foot extra. I don't see, to be honest with you, very much a difference between what's permitted, allowed, and what he's requesting. Second thing, this property is to the north of the bungalow, so it will not reduce light to it. And being a 9.5 meter away, it is also a significant distance. I do understand that these properties are a bit smaller than other semi-detached properties, maybe somewhere else, but is what it is. I don't have any issues at all supporting this application, so I will be supporting for approval. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've got Councillor Jonathan Nixon, then I intend to move to the vote if that's okay.
I've timed it perfectly then, thank you, Councillor Iqbal. I'd like to move refusal.
All right, I thought that had already been moved and seconded.
That's it? Right, well, people are wittering so much that I forgot. So can we go to the vote then?
So your point is that people are wittering too much, Jonathan, that's what it is. Okay, so I've got, it's a straightforward vote again, so it's either approval or refusal. I'll call out your name, and if you can indicate if you're for, if you're against, if you want to abstain, abstain. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
For.
Councillor Mohammed Aslam.
For.
Councillor David Clegg.
Against.
Councillor Sarah Corbin Price.
Against.
Councillor Tommy Cooney. Councillor Tommy Cooney. Jane, is Tommy still with us?
No, it looks as though he's gone.
Okay, I'll give him one more shout. Councillor Tommy Cooney. No.
He
Councillor
does
Paul.
appear to be on, Councillor Iqbal.
He is on.
He does appear to be.
Last and final call for Councillor Tommy Cooney. No. Councillor Paul Foxley.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Iqbal. For. Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Ashad Mahmood.
For.
Councillor Brian Newman.
Against.
Councillor Jonathan Nixon.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Saqib.
For.
Councillor David Whip.
Against.
I'm going to give one last call out to Councillor Tommy Cooney in the interests of justice. Councillor Tommy Cooney. No, we're satisfied he's not present at the meeting. No. So the voting, Jane, is it 6 apiece?
Yeah.
Yes, Chairman, it is.
And Neil, can I just check if he was to reduce it slightly? I mean, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but if they were to reduce it slightly, what's the likelihood of it getting approved?
Well, Chairman, the recommendation would still be the same. Our view is that it's too close as it stands. So.
Hang on.
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
No,
Yeah,
it's done. It's done now.
No, hold on, Jonathan.
I've just spoke to Tommy just in case he's having connection issues, and he's trying to connect back on.
Voting is done.
Yeah, hold on.
What has taken place?
Philip, I gave him 5 call outs and there was no response. Do you think it's fair for me to move on?
Yes, I do. Yeah, you've got to. You're giving plenty of chance.
Right. I'm going to use my casting vote then. I'm going to vote it as I did in the original motion. I'm going to vote for. Okay, Mr. Asham, you're more than welcome to stop for the rest of the meeting, but if you want to leave, you just need to sign yourself out.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, it's now 10 to 9 and we're on item 5. And if you just note what Councillor Nixon said earlier. So item 5 is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report.
Move it.
So I'm happy to second that. Everybody,
Chairman, just I know it's easy just to move these things on quickly. There is a change to the borrowing strategy in there. It will get reported to council because of that, but I just needed to be aware of that.
That's fine, thank you. Is there anybody against? Oh, I've got various hands up now. Jonathan, is yours an old hand or a new hand?
I think I've done enough wittering, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll lower it.
Thank you. Ashad, is yours a new hand?
Chairman, yes, it is, yeah.
One.
Just a couple of questions. On number 20, it kind of talks about beginning of the year, I think it was 20 million investment, and then currently it's only 17 million. Could Dean kind of probably give us a bit more information or an explanation, the background to that, please? That's the first question.
Okay, do you want to ask your questions and then?
Yeah, and secondly, obviously, I think there's I think it's number 23. I think we're going to be about 100k short due to the COVID situation. With my main question there is, what impact, the long-term impact, is it going to have on our borrowing? Are we going to borrow cheaply now, but pay off our other debt and then pay in for the long term. How will that have an impact on our, like I say, long-term strategy plan? Will we end up paying more in the coming years, or give us a bit more information on that as well, please?
Okay, thanks, Asha. Dean, do you want to just respond to those two questions, please?
Yeah, just on the balance of investment, that fluctuates from one day to the next according to the cash the council receives and the payments the council has to make. In this year, you'll probably be aware we've been receiving quite substantial sums of funding from the government to do with the business grants, and we hold that until we have to pay that money out to businesses. As an example, we received £26 million during April to do that, and we also hold the council's balances under investment as well. So that number will vary from one day to the next according to what cash we receive and what payments we make. So what you see is a snapshot at a point in time. If I were showing you today, it'd be a different set of figures because of that. In terms of the forecast of borrowing and the cost of that, the variance you referred to is because the interest rates on investments are largely based on the bank base rate, because we only invest for periods up to 365 days. As you're probably aware, the bank base rate currently is 0.1%, so it's marginal to say the least. And the forecast going forward is that's unlikely to change in the very near future, probably in the medium term. Likewise with the borrowing rates, as you're probably aware, we're in probably the lowest interest rate environment for a good number of years. And so it is cheaper to borrow. That said, because the council's got surplus cash, we can use our internal resources to fund our cash needs without having to go out to borrow. So that's the reason why we're changing the borrowing strategy. And at this stage, the fortunate thing is we review that on an annual basis, so it allows us to take into account the position at that point in time.
Okay. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to the local plan. Neil, do you want to speak on this, or do you just want councillors to kick off the debate and then I can bring you in?
Chairman, I think it's such a big document. There's a lot in there. I think, Chairman, we know where we've focused the changes here. We were ready to go a couple of years ago, but we have altered the housing numbers. Chairman, that was the real focus of some of the delays in this. Chairman, it's a culmination of a lot of work. I thank the team, to be honest with you, looking at the essay work and all the preparatory work. Chairman, I don't propose to go through each document, each policy in turn, Chairman. It would be, you'd be here all night. So, Chairman, I think I would prefer if members spoke on any particular issues they have with the document, or not, hopefully.
Okay, thanks, Neil. David?
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, this is a huge piece of work, and I do acknowledge what Neil is saying about the work that's been put into this. But I think there are two broad issues affecting Pendle and affecting the country, which could well pull the rug from under this, at least parts of this document. And the first of these is the fact that the basis of government planning policy and that part of it which deals with the standard number are very much in doubt, and I don't think anybody at this point in time knows what is going to come through with that. And if that's the case, then we're building. Sorry, pardon the pun. We're building on shifting sands here. Secondly, the impact of COVID-19 is such that could transform the economic prospects. It could transform the housing requirements, and I think we're just doing this at the wrong time. I appreciate we're not going to get any certainty in any short space of time, but I think it would be entirely wrong of us to put forward proposals, admittedly only for consultation at this point, but put forward proposals which would not necessarily be, relevant or pertinent in, say, 3 months or 4 months' time, and I just very much doubt whether we should be recommending to council that these go out for consultations at this point. So I pose that question without moving anything, but I think we're being premature here, and I understand all the arguments in terms of things becoming out of date, but I think the very basis on which a lot of this is put together could well be out of date by what happens in the next 3 and 4 months.
Okay, Sarah?
Obviously, we've touched on the immense amount of work that's gone in it. Jane very kindly put a copy in the post to me because I was struggling, sort of looking backwards and forwards. I don't want to nitpick, but I can just get that out of the way before I can come on to some broader points. Page 242, there is a local green space decision tree, and halfway down it, point 3, it's exactly the wrong way round. So it just gives the wrong answer. That's just a very small point. I notice that some of the sites in Live 8 don't have maps. There are 6 without maps. And certainly if that was coming to public consultation, I speak as the beleaguered chairman of the Cone Neighbourhood Plan, and in fact, Councillor Clegg on this very committee pulled me up and rang me up and said that one of the maps in our valued green spaces was wrong in Alkin Coates, and I do think it's so important. He was right, we got the right map. It's so important to have those things for members of the public looking in their own areas. I echo the words of Councillor Webb, and it isn't the fault of this council. So this isn't in any way Pendle Council's fault, nor could it be, that this awful sort of coronavirus economic dive, we only had to watch what happened yesterday with the economic statement. This has happened, and we were well on with this report at that time. But we are relying on the figures, according to the report here, we're relying on economic figures from March 2019, and we're in a different place. And that's just awful. We don't know where we're going to be. But I had a look at back at the last 8 years. We had an economic ambition target last time. That was before I became a councillor, of 298. And in the last 8 years, we have on average built only 124 houses a year. We've picked it up recently. But that, and past performance is no predictor of future performance. Of course, that they always say that with investments, but it's still really poor. In fact, if you look at it, if you could look at the 146 that the government suggests as a potential for us without any economic ambition or growth, which we fear might have happened with everything that's gone on in Barnoldswick and other places over the last few months, then we have only been able to deliver 83% in the last 8 years of that 146 figure. We're closing in, we're close to it, but we haven't even managed to deliver that. So I worry, because all councillors have seen that when they get big planning applications, they see those dread words at the bottom. Pendle doesn't have a 5-year housing land supply. The planning tilt is altered in favour of all sustainable development. And we are actually being, because we've signed up to it, pushed into a position where sometimes we have to approve applications that we don't think are sustainable or not in the right place. And I might point out to you that the Combe Neighbourhood Plan, for example, we've set about to try and find as many sites as possible, some that developers would love, some less so, within our settlement boundary. We found 28 sites, some of which have not been identified by Pendle, and we found, and we think we've been conservative, 705 units within the boundary of Combe, which is an overperformance. But I would like to choose a low figure and smash that low figure, because we do perform economically over the next few years, rather than always be playing catch up. And we sort of see a bit of that confusion in Live 8. Live 8 reserve site, paragraph 4. It's confusing. I didn't understand it. There's reference to a 5% buffer, a 20% buffer, and then in Mr. Holton's paper, there's talk of a 10% buffer. Now, all this talk of buffers is the target we've chosen plus that percentage on top. So we've got to be aware that if we underperform, we get the buffers on top, which is why Live 8 exists. So my view is that we need maps for the public, and we need to go for lower targets. And also, I do have a question. I raised it yesterday at the climate emergency session. It says that the sustainability appraisal report and the habitat regulations assessment won't be ready until the final document. And I think, well, that's how I take the reading of it. Councillor Greaves read it in a different way. I feel that these are important. The housing allocated sites are actually, they're scored on their sustainability and habitats and so forth. And so therefore, if they're not ready, I wonder whether it just looks to the public as if these are an afterthought. And they shouldn't be. We are a council that's declared a climate emergency. So they shouldn't be an afterthought. They should be a forethought, if you like. And, as one of the sites in Live 8, close to my heart, is the Upper Rough. And that's got a sustainability from a habitat perspective of 0. That's been scored as 0. And yet the RSPB this year, after successful fledging of curlew chicks, came out and said this was a critical site for the red listed curlew to breed on. And in fact, they couldn't go to the next field over or the next field over because it was marshy and horrible and reedy, and that makes it perfect for the curlew. So, I think those kinds of things are important for how things look with the public, as well as how we should score our sites. So that's my little overview. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Neil, I know we've got John on the meeting as well. Any comments in terms of what Councillor Whip and Councillor Corbin Price have said from either of you?
Chairman, just in overall terms, we met the planning inspector. If you recall that those councillors who were around at the time, of course, so you've all gone.
You keep freezing.
Are you still there, Chair?
Yes.
So you're back there. Chairman, I'm just saying, for those councillors who were around for the core strategy, the inspector for that came to advise us said if you wait for every circumstance to be ready, you put your plan together. And I understand we're in a situation of flux, considerable flux, but Chairman, those kind of issues can be teased out in that we'll get back should we go out to consultation, Chairman. And remember, you can always decide how your consultation responses come back that you want to take another view of things, Chairman. My view would be go out to your consultation and see what emerges. Chairman, in terms of economic figures, we checked those with the newer Experian data. We purchased some of that through Litchfields, and Chairman, that really didn't give us a longer term economic to the assessment. So, Chairman, that really didn't alter the the housing figure, Chairman. Chairman, one point that Councillor Corbin Price was saying, we haven't delivered the sites, so the number of units. It's not all about delivery, it's about the need for those. And Chairman, we haven't delivered our economic development sites yet, which are now coming on stream. So Chairman, you have to take into account, you can't just deal with your standard methodology figure, which incidentally will be at 214 now using the modern day population projections, Chairman. Our economic aspirations have taken time, but they are now, Chairman, coming forward. Chairman, I don't really want to go into the neighbourhood plan. We'll come back to comments about the deliverability of those sites coming forward. Chairman, just in terms of the SA report and the habitats report, they are in place. The SA work is an ongoing proposal, an ongoing piece of work. Chairman, we have that. If you want us to publish that with the consultation, more than happy to do so. But generally, it's unusual for SA reports to be published until the plan that the council wants to take forward is finalised. But Chairman, work that we've done so far is there. Chairman, in terms of the green space designation and the sites, Chairman, if you want clarity on the site extensions to go out to consultation, those are matters that we can relatively straightforwardly deal with. But Chairman, I think fundamentally is we need, we've been crying for this plan to go forward, to give us certainty, to give site certainty for some time. I do understand that there are very trying economic situations, but Chairman, where does that start and stop? I think what we should be doing is going out, consult on this. People then can comment on, does this plan, does this Part 2 plan recognise the economic uncertainties? Is it bold enough? Is it not bold enough? Is it does it provide for too many houses, too little houses? Chairman, that's the purpose of the consultation process. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Neil. I'm going to bring Nadeem in, but whilst Nadeem's calling, I need to sign off and sign back on because my iPad is about to die on me. So, Nadeem.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak because I think most of the comments have been made by Councillor Webb and Sarah. I do tend to agree with what they said in terms of is this the right time to be doing it, in terms of obviously the situation we're currently in. I understand the points which Neil has raised in response to that. How long do we wait for? And the potential uncertainty possibly that could create if we delay this process. So once I finish, I just want Neil to answer, if we did decide not to consult or go out to consultation at this moment in time, what potential risks are we facing in terms of as a council if we decide to delay this consultation to the local plan and maybe go back to it in the future? Just in terms of some of the points Sarah raised in terms of the potential missing information or plans, and the query also regarding the figures within the report and whether they are actually achievable. We do tend to put forward figures which we haven't achieved and nowhere near in getting to. So my point is, and what is the point in putting them figures in if we know now even that we are not going to achieve them figures? So can I just raise a couple of points? Perhaps Neil maybe wants to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, if I go to the issue about the figures, Chairman, we are obliged to follow a standard methodology and a policy position that the government set out, and that includes the standard methodology figure and the additions. If we've got economic development aspirations, which are set out in the Part 1 core strategy, they haven't altered. They've already been agreed by council and been approved at an examination in public. We have to take account of both of those. So the standard methodology, which is bashing figures, shall we say, based on population projections, even though they're out of date, and then setting the economic aspirations that we have agreed and are set out in our core strategy. So I do understand we haven't delivered, but we've also had extremely challenging times. Whereas last year we delivered 310 houses, which was slightly in excess of what we're proposing, and that will be 70 above the new figure. I think we've got to separate out what we think we can achieve through economics to what we actually do need, and aspire to try and get those houses built that we need, just to satisfy our general population changes. Because some of the past delivery rates haven't even satisfied those, and we all know that we've had population loss, particularly in the younger cohorts. So we do need to work on those. And then obviously, if we've got economic aspirations, they have to match with our housing aspirations as well, or our housing needs. Chairman, I think the first question Councillor Ormin asked was, where would we be if we don't have a plan? If you don't have a plan, you don't have 5-year supplies, etc., etc. So that it puts you into a very difficult situation. For the immediate short term, we've still got the core strategy. So in effect, you will be where you are now, and that has resulted in the applications that we get adjacent to settlement boundaries, etc. So it would perpetuate some of the uncertainty that I think we've had and we've had concerns over for some time, and it would lead to probably plan applications on an ad hoc basis that we face, some successfully, some unsuccessfully. So it would just place us into a prolonged period of uncertainty.
Nadeem, do you want to come back?
Yeah, just a quick point. I mean, if we did go out to consultation, we're going out in December, which is what, next week. I genuinely don't believe going out to consultation over December and January during COVID and during the Christmas period is the right time to do.
Just to help you on that, Nadeem, I mean, we're recommending that the recommendations, if they're agreed, go to full council, which I think is on.
Yeah, Councillor Val.
And then for 8 weeks, we could say that.
Councillor Val.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah. Councillor Val, it's Philip. I know there is a recommendation about putting it to the council meeting, but in fact that's not necessary. The role of policy and resources is to develop policies, which includes undertaking consultation exercises. It only needs to go to council when you come back with the finished product.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Philip. I mean, my own view is, and I take on board what Councillors Webb and Corbin Price have said, but the amount of work that's previously been put in by officers, my own view is that we should go out for consultation. Now, when the consultation starts and finishes is potentially up for discussion. But as part of the consultation, public consultation, if the things come back, then I think as a council we need to make a decision what the consultation. Who knows where we'll be in 3 or 4 months' time as a society, for that matter. We'll have the vaccine in place and everything will be hickory-dory, as the Prime Minister says. But I think rather than killing it dead tonight, my preference would be is that we seek to go out to public consultation and see where we are when we come back. Sarah?
I just wonder, it was mentioned when we had our little briefing for councillors on housing that Lichfields could give us more up-to-date figures. Why don't we ask for some more up-to-date figures, get the maps and do the final things, and then go out for consultation after Christmas? I agree, we have to move on with this, but I feel that fundamentally, through no fault of anybody's, the economic evidence that we're basing this on is obviously now, in the past, and entirely wrong. And that's nobody's fault. It just is the position that we're in.
Okay, before I bring you in, Dean, can I just ask a question of Neil? That in terms of if we were minded to defer this for a month to give that opportunity to Lichfields, Neil, to come back with some updated stuff, is that doable, do you think?
Chairman, I don't think a month's delay will derail anything, and a consultation after Christmas, it's a matter of weeks in a long process. But Chairman, apologies if I didn't do this, but we did get new figures from Lichfields. Our last plan, so the core strategy, the adopted plan, and this plan are based on Experian job growth or loss figures. The housing methodology that we've got, housing needs assessment, was based on, I think, March's figures. We got up to the most up-to-date figures Lichfield purchased after we had the briefing for members on the housing needs assessment, and it didn't change the job prospects in the longer term in any significant way. Because what came out of that exercise, that the briefing with members was, well, will it change? What evidence have we got? And Chairman, we've only got, unless we went out and did some empirical data collection ourselves, which will take months and months, we rely almost exclusively, all councils rely on either Cambridge Econometrics or Experian or one of the other recognised data sets, and we have got the Experian figures, which, as I said, not repeating me too many times, hasn't shifted the job prospects in the plan period in any significant way.
Okay, you've kept quiet all night, Dean. Do you want to speak?
In fact, I was going to say what Neil had just said, which is I was under the impression that that's what you had when Lichfield did a presentation to councillors in October, was it? So I was just going to say that.
Okay. There's no proposal on the table, just to try and move the debate forward. I was going to suggest something, but David, you've indicated you want to speak.
Yes, Chairman. I mean, I think we should defer this. I think that the further work that's been suggested in terms of the current economic position and what we're going to go into 2021 with is important. And equally, if the goalposts are going to be moved at a national level, then that should inform the policies that we're putting out for consultation. And it may be that we have greater certainty by the time we get into January, and we're able to move forward with some of the parameters better understood than they currently are. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay, well,
proposal.
I mean, in terms of the recommendations that are set out on the report, I'm sensing that wouldn't get support from across the committee. So if we're minded to, right, because I don't want to, just take this off the agenda completely, because I think the amount of effort that's been put in by officers is recognised by all councillors. If there's some tweaking that needs to be done, are people then minded to defer this to either the December meeting or the January meeting? Neil, I'm just looking at you for some inspiration.
Chairman, I'm really in your hands. Obviously, we can represent this with some of the corrections that Councillor Corbin. I'm in your hands. We can bring it back December or January if that's your wish.
I'm conscious of the pressure that's on yourself, Neil, and your staff in terms of COVID. So what I'm going to suggest then, and just David suggested that we defer it. I'm going to second that and suggest that we defer it to the January meeting of this committee, which gives us, I think, enough time and gives officers to get your batteries recharged over Christmas anyway. Is there anybody that disagrees with that? No, so that's okay in terms of elected members. Okay, the next item I've got is the clean air strategy. Is there anybody to talk on this in terms of officers before I bring Sarah in?
Can I move it?
Well, Chairman, I think Mickey Duck's attending the meeting. He may have a few words to say, so I'll bring him in if that's okay.
Mickey?
Sorry, yeah, hi. Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, councillors. Just wanted to talk today about the air quality strategy. Clean Air Strategy, sorry. The Environmental Protection Act 1995 places a duty on Pendle Council to assess the air quality against national standards. Across Pendle, this is achieved by the use of diffusion tubes across 56 sites within the borough. The diffusion tubes are monitoring for levels of nitrogen dioxide, otherwise known as NOx. NOx emissions are contributed to road transport emissions. The current national standard for NOx is 40 micrograms per metre cube. Excuse me. In 2011, an area encompassing the main roads of Cohen, of Windsor Street and North Valley Road, basically the nitrogen dioxide levels were exceeded against that, the actual national average. In response to these levels, an air quality management area was declared. In 2015, an air quality action plan was introduced to reduce the levels of nitrogen dioxide. Implementations of the action plan are monitored as part of the air quality status report, which the council is required to produce to monitor the data trends of levels of nitrogen dioxide. Overall, air quality is improving across the borough, with no annual exceedances of the national standards. This is the same picture within the air quality management area, with a reduction of levels of nitrogen dioxide. And should this downward trend continue, then we'll be potentially looking to revoke the air quality management action area. As mentioned, the council has a duty to improve air quality. In doing so, the following points are contained within the action plan, and these include: in 2019, the Borough of Pendle classified climate change as an emergency. In conjunction with Lancashire County Council, we're improving traffic flow and easing congestion and reducing traffic idling. Encouraging model shift away from car use, promoting alternative methods of transport. Working with the council's planning department to ensure where possible air quality and climate change actions are considered during the development stage. Working with E.ON to install car charging points, in council car parks. Contributing to and influencing from contribute and influence from development policies with Lancashire County Council. Work in partnership with Lancashire County Council to increase the uptake and implement of action travel plans. To conclude, the council has a statutory obligation to keep air quality under review and to produce the air quality status report, which forms part of the air quality strategy. I'm just asking members here to actually note the strategy.
That's fine. Cheers, Mickey. Thanks for that. Councillor Whip, you moved the recommendations. Do you want to speak as well?
All I wanted to add, Chairman, the reference to car charging points, which we could also pick up on the Climate Emergency Action Plan, which comes up shortly. But under pressure from Councillor Tom Whip, you may be aware that we have gone all EV in our household. I may need to declare an interest, but the importance of car charging points, hang on, we've got a cat now. Their availability to charge EVs is quite critical. So if we can put them in sensible places in car parks, and I know that work is going on to achieve that, then all the better. And I think one of the cats, JJ, does want to say hello, but she's very shy, so you'll just have to make do with a tail passing the camera lens.
Okay. Thank you.
So I am moving.
Okay, I'm happy to second that. Sarah, did you want to speak?
Yeah, yes, please. Just a couple of little points. If we look at page 6, and by the way, I thought it was a really interesting report and the diversity of things that are being done. I would just say that your tables could be laid out in a way that you didn't have to cross-reference completely. Drove me a bit mad this afternoon. But all the information is there. But on page 6, it says that you've set up a Facebook page, and I couldn't find it. I could be being doltish about it.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't quite catch that last bit on page. But you said about page 6.
Creating a Pendle Air Quality Facebook group.
Yeah, that's correct. We've been speaking to communications about that. It's something we haven't actually done, but it's something we're really keen to get involved with on that side of things. And obviously, it's for the community to know what we're actually doing in relation to Pendle Council in raising that awareness about air quality, but also equally to have discussions and get feedback from the community about any sort of projects that we're not aware of that they can feed into our air quality side of things. So.
Splendid. And in the paragraph below that, there's some sort of mea culpas, if you like, in terms of COVID-19 and staff time. But then the next phrase jumped out at me, that we don't appear to have the political will to push projects through. Well, I was at the Climate Change Emergency Working Group yesterday, and I heard Councillor Greaves and I heard Councillor Tennant, and they heard me. In fact, I think Councillor Greaves muted me. I got so enthusiastic. So I think we must have the political will, even if we don't have the other things. We must have the political will to force these things through.
I think I can answer that for you, Sarah, and I concur with what you're saying, that clearly there is the political will across all political groups to push projects through. So let me assure officers and the people of Pendle that all 3 political groups on this council have got a political will in terms of the climate agenda.
That's good to know. It's what I suspected. Just a little query about the Cone air quality management area, which is of course on the dreaded North Valley. I've had correspondence with Mr. Langton on this point, because in Lidget and beyond we had a PhD chemist who was enjoying spending time downloading from the automatic monitoring the fact that the air quality was exceeding a lot over several years, often, and it's great to hear that it has gone down. But I think, if we're wanting to show that we care and to offer that outreach, we should try to be looking to offer that facility. Because I wrote to Mr. Langton and I said, oh, our chemists can no longer look at the air quality on the North Valley. And Mr. Langton said, it's broken, we're doing it manually. And that actually sounds quite expensive as well. I'm imagining it's your time going out and looking at these things. I think it's wonderful if we can offer members of the public the opportunity to see that we are putting these things in place and that the trend is downward. And I think that will give a lot of confidence to people, certainly if we're talking that after all the improvements on the North Valley, and we're hoping that traffic will flow more fluently, that we can prove to people, yes, we made this an area of special focus, and look now, it's no longer.
Okay, point noted there, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Then I've finally got Councillor Greaves, and then we'll move on.
Yes, I'm still here, believe it or not. I'd just like to deny vigorously that I ever muted Councillor Coburn-Price. I did, however, point out to her that I had the power to do so if I wanted. But can I just say that in terms of political will, I think it would be very helpful if we had, as Councillor Coburn-Price said, we had a really good, under present circumstances, meeting of the working group yesterday, the Climate Emergency Working Group, and had some good presentations. And I think it would be very helpful if Michael Duck could come and give a presentation on air quality to the next meeting of the working group, which we expect to be sometime in February.
That's fine. I'm sure Michael would love to come to the climate change.
Glad to come in there, Chairman. Yeah. Thank you very much, would like to accept that invitation and come forward and speak during the climate change meeting and sort of tell a little bit more about what's involved in the air quality side and what we're actually doing and looking for. I'd welcome that. And in respect of the statement in relation to political will, I can see that it's a really positive attitude that we've all got tonight, and we're all sort of working together to the same end in that. And I think I'll probably take a very valid point and read out that information from the actual report. So that's duly noted. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Mickey. Thanks a lot, mate.
Can I just ask Jane Watson if she'll pick that up from this meeting now?
She will indeed.
Yes, I've noted that. I've noted that, Councillor Greaves.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. Moving on to the next item, the land rear of 4 Pendleside. I'm happy to move the recommendations. Is there anybody that disagrees? No, silence means you're all in agreement. Thank you very much. The Burnley Pendle and Rosenham Emergency Assistant Grant Scheme. Dean, do you just want to touch on this very quickly?
Yeah, Chairman, I won't say a great deal. I think members are familiar with this now. It's a scheme where we've been given funding from the County Council to both provide food for vulnerable people and also to provide other support to them. We're doing it through both the Pendle Food Alliance and the CVS. So we're using them, we've commissioned them to provide this, and it's been up and running for probably a month now. We have noticed that take-up has been relatively slow. We're looking at how we can streamline the process of people getting access to the services. So if I could get members' support to promote this as far and wide as possible, so that those people who are in need of additional support do get access to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody okay with that? Just for information anyway. Yeah, fine. Thank you. The next one is the Climate Emergency Action Plan. We've got 6 monthly updates. We've got the chairman of the committee here as well. Does any member have any questions of either the chief executive or the chairman of the Climate Action Committee? Councillor David Whip.
Thank you, Chairman. It's more of a comment, really. I do welcome the report that we've got. There's quite a bit of it which is planning to do things rather than doing them. But you'll recall that Councillor Tom Whip passed a proposal, a resolution which was passed by full council a while ago about tree planting, and he very recently persuaded 15 volunteers to plant some 450 trees in Barnoldswick, and there's many hundreds more trees planned to be planting. And the council as a whole is aiming to have those planting schemes in place. There's a huge amount of support from residents for such schemes, and despite the difficulties of COVID-19 and the various restrictions that we have to live under, there are a lot of volunteers who are willing to participate in those actions. So the more we can get on with that, the better. And I know that Councillor Tom Whitt will continue to lead the charge.
Very good. Councillor Greaves. Tony, you're on mute. I don't know whether Sarah's muted you or...
No. Sorry, I was not I'm not only on mute, I'm on not to be seen. Sorry, if I got it up, it was because I'd forgotten to put it down before.
All right, okay, that's fine. Everybody okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Next one is the riverbank collapse at Cornwater. I mean, Jane circulated pictures of what's going on. Dean, have you found the money to do this?
Yeah, Chairman, I think I've left this as long as I could possibly leave it. I think I'm told we have no choice but to try to do something about this, unfortunately. So I think the report sets out the reasons why it's a responsibility of the council to actually undertake the work. I think it also talks about there being a footpath as well across the site that could be affected. So I think we've fenced that off and made that safe, but we have to take action. As you see in the report, we've identified £50,000 from the renewals reserve in order to fund this. I think we have no choice but to get on and do it, unfortunately.
Okay. Sarah, you've indicated to speak.
Yeah, I'm very grateful that this is being done, but I must point out that while our officers think that actually all of this was caused by what was the gas board in the 1960s or whatever, that they're not accepting responsibility for it. And all of this money will be spent just as a temporary measure and actually to create a report for a hope that we can get a grant, because apparently it will be hundreds of thousands of pounds to create a long-term solution. So it is a real concern for flooding in Cottontree and other areas, but we have to grasp the nettle. We have no choice, and I'm very grateful to Mr. Langton on behalf of Bullsworth residents.
Okay.
Move that we get on with it, Chairman.
Okay. Everybody okay with that? Yeah. Thank you very much. Next is the waiving of standing orders for some public groundwork around Bonalswick Town Square. David?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen. He says, if I can find the right screen to share. Oh, no, it isn't working. Never mind. The work is almost complete on what Pendle Council and Bonalswick Town Council were originally going to do. Very grateful for the County Council to come in at the 11th hour and match the funding. So we're allowed to extend the scheme to further pavements around the town centre, which will be very welcome. Some of them are quite slippery and unfortunately people do fall on them. So the new flags will be far grippier, less slippy and flatter, so that there are less trips. So the County Council have come with the funding. I understand that there's a draft grant agreement in place, ready to be signed, fingers crossed, so that the existing contractor can carry on seamlessly with the extended work, and we use the existing compound to carry on with that. So I think it's entirely sensible that we do waive the relevant standing orders, and I move the recommendation for the reasons set out. Thank you.
Happy to second that. Nadeem?
Just very briefly, just want to mention and thank really LCC for their support on this. I know Councillor Jennifer Purcell has been regularly updating us at our group meetings and telling us all about this project. So I want to thank Councillor Jennifer Purcell for her persistence on this matter too.
Okay, that's fine. And next time you see Jeff driving, Nadeem, you can thank him in person.
Will do.
Okay, everybody okay with that? Thank you. Next one is waiving of standing orders for specialist ground treatment at phase 1 on the access road. Happy to move the recommendation.
Second that.
Everybody okay with that? Yeah, thank you. Next is the IT and digital strategies. Dean, you as the IT expert, is there anything that we need to be aware of?
Chairman, I will be taking credit away from Philip, who has been working on this quite diligently. So I don't know if Philip wants to add anything to both strategies.
Philip?
Yeah.
He is here. Oh, I think he is. No, I think he's happy for you as his junior Dean. just to take credit on Philip's behalf. A job well done.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to take that.
Okay, everybody okay with that? The next one is tenders. I think they're just for information. Straightforward enough. Moving on to items from area committees. The first one is from Nelson Area Committee. I'm happy to move that the land adjacent 194 Halifax Road is declared surplus. And obviously the relevant manager is authorised to negotiate a long leasehold. Everybody okay with that? Yeah. Next one, request for allotment from Salterford Parish Council.
Can I move that one, Chairman? It's a piece of land on the licence. I think there's a month's notice to be given. Salterford have a demand for allotments. Obviously, the Parish Council are the allotment authority. This land isn't doing very much at all, and it would be a very beneficial use. So I move.
Anybody against that? No. Okay, that's carried. Next one is the request from Briarfield and Area Committee to approve funding to refill their 23 red grit bins. Commendable of Briarfield Area Committee to fill the red grit bins, but can I suggest that officers liaise with the Area Committee in terms of their capital their allocation of funding, and try to play around and work with Briarfield Town Council if and when it snows to make sure the red grit bins are filled. So at this stage, the committee notes the request. Are you okay with that? Yeah. Item 17 is the budget working group. The minutes have been circulated for information.
Chairman, can I move those? I mean, it's a pretty dire situation, and I'm sure that Mr. Langton and his Murray colleagues within the finance section will be browbeating the rest of the council in due course. I'm watching his face closely to impress people with just how dire the situation is, and you know, unfortunately, not apparently improving very much. So I think I've baited him into commenting now.
Yeah, before he comments, I think all he's going to say is that we need not worry. I wrote on behalf of the council to the Prime Minister yesterday and made the point that of the letter of the 16th of October that heavily centres about the budget, and no doubt the Prime Minister will reply back to myself and Dean and yourself, Councillor Webb, to say, don't worry about the budget for this year and don't worry about next year. So yeah, Dean need not have any sleepless nights.
I'm sure that I share your level of confidence that will happen, and I sincerely hope that it will.
Okay, Dean, are you sharing with us that you had a phone call from the Prime Minister's office today to sort the budget out?
Sadly not. I think the Prime Minister's in tears at the moment of one form or another. No, what I was going to say was, of course, it was the comprehensive spending review yesterday. And whilst that doesn't provide us with the detail of what the council gets, it does give us an indication of what local authorities may get. So the headline was that we would, as a group of local authorities, receive an increase of 4.5% in real terms in funding, which is building on the increase that we got last year. Of course, what goes with that is, until we see the detail, it's difficult to say whether we will get 4.5% or that's the average and we'll get less or more than that. So I just wanted members to be aware that we don't get the detail at comprehensive spending review time. I'm told that we'll get the settlement before the 17th of December. So I might have an early Christmas present for you. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's been recorded, that comment, so that's fine. Okay, thank you. Item 18 is the exclusion of public and press. Happy to move that. Jane, will you let me know once the live stream's ended, please?
Yes, I will.